Today we're in conversation with New York area violinist Adam von Housen. Adam is a native of Atlanta. He studied violin at Brooklyn College and for the last several years has been playing the circuit in New York City as both a soloist and as an orchestral player. And I'm very lucky to have worked with him numerous times. He's a great, as I said, soloist and orchestral player, great team player. And I'm happy to welcome him to the program today. So welcome, Adam. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hello.
So Adam, tell us what music has meant to you during this pandemic.
Honestly, it's kind of kept me sane because I think in the very beginning of the pandemic, I was kind of scared to go outside. This out there idea that if I walked outside, I'd breathe in the coronavirus. So I was staying in my room all the time. And when I'm bored, I practice. That's what I've done since I was a child. So music has, if I didn't have violin, I probably would have gone crazy. So learned a lot of pieces and solo violin pieces, and even recorded a bunch of a cappella pieces where I pieced together the different parts that I recorded.
I've seen several of those. Those are, I'm always in awe of being able to play all of the parts of the piece in tempo and come up with a product like that. I've always been very impressed by that. So, and I think for many of us, music has been the salvation during this time. I mean, for me, I played through, I do a lot of early music, so I played through all of the Bach cantatas on the organ and kind of knew some of them before, but certainly not all of them. And if I hadn't been able to, access the scores online and play along with recordings and whatnot, then it would also have been very difficult. And like you, it was a scary time because it was uncharted waters, and the fact that we had just been, all of us had been kind of performing together and then not performing together. It was really disconcerting. So I resonate with what you say there. So you're both a soloist and an orchestra player. You and I have worked together many times on projects. Take us through how you prepare a solo work. Say you're given an assignment to learn a concerto. Take us through your process from the moment that you read it until you go on stage to perform it.
So it really depends on the amount of time I have. But I guess if I had a year or so, I would break the piece up into a lot of smaller sections, and I would learn small sections at a time. And I think I tend to go for the more difficult sections first. And I try to dissect those sections and figure out what makes them difficult. Is it the entire section? Is it a run or something? Yeah, and definitely a lot of slow practice, which is, my teachers barked at me for a long time, practice slowly, practice slowly. And I think when I was younger, I didn't listen to them, but the older I've gotten and the more I've had to prepare for concertos, like solo concerts, I've realized the importance of slow practice and building out a plan to, I could be better about this, but I've definitely gotten better in recent years of building a plan. Like I said, dividing it up into small sections and deciding how much I'm going to work on every day and setting goals. By next week, I want to have this much learned. And I go back and forth. Sometimes I try to memorize it immediately so that I don't have to read the music in front of me and I can shut my eyes and really listen. And then sometimes I take my time memorizing. Like with Brahms' concerto, I had a year, so I sort of took my time of memorizing it. And sometimes it's good to have the music in front of you because sometimes when you see something, you can get a new idea. Or for me, at least, I'll speak for myself. Sometimes when I have the music in front of me, I am able to think more rather than, I don't know, it's hard to explain.
No, I understand. I understand that there is, I think that there are merits to memorizing pieces, and for a piece like the Brahms concerto, I think for performance, it makes sense to memorize the piece. There's a long tradition of memorizing music like that, but one doesn't always have to. I mean, I've attended performances of I remember I went to a performance of the Philharmonic playing the Messiaen Turangalila Symphony, one of my very favorite works by Messiaen, and from that time period in the 20th century. And Yu Jia Wang had, the piano score in front of her, and this is Yu Jia Wang, the great, great, famous pianist. And I think you should do what you're most comfortable with. And if even having the score in front of you and not looking at it, but just referencing it or having it as kind of a safety net is still okay. It's no big deal.
I tend to memorize things because I like to just shut my eyes and remove that sense to heighten the sense of listening or hearing. And but sometimes there have been times where I've had the music in front of me and I knew the piece, but maybe it was one concert where I didn't have as much time to prepare. So I think I actually played more beautifully with the music in front of me in those cases where I have less time.
Sure. It seems like it sort of depends on the piece and depends on the situation.
Yeah. If it's something I've heard a million times, then there's sort of less of an excuse for me personally. But if it's something new, if it's like a first performance, I'll try to have it memorized. But depending on if it's something like Messiaen or Bartok or something, I think for a first performance, I'd have the music there for reference, just in case. And then I don't have to worry because sometimes that can make me play worse when I'm hoping that it's still memorized, and that happens in performances sometimes, like especially with pieces I don't have as much time. There is that fear that's in there that's like, oh, is it truly memorized? And sometimes you don't know until you're under pressure. So having that security there, you don't have to worry. It removes that fear from your head, and you're able to listen more, focus more, I think.
Absolutely. Let's go back a little bit and talk about what you mentioned regarding slow practice, because this is something that, like you said, we're taught early on to play things slow, get the muscle memory. For me, it's the fingerings when I'm playing something on the organ. Talk more about the merits of really concentrating on passages and maybe specific experiences you've had where you saw yourself improve more and faster because you worked slower at first.
Well, actually, a particular piece comes to mind that I've never performed, and I'm not sure I'd ever perform it. But I worked on it just for myself because it's the variations on "God Save the King" by Paganini, which are insane. It's so difficult. But I remember a few years ago I was working on it, and I remember probably 10 years ago, I tried to learn it, and I remember getting so frustrated. I thought I'll never be able to play this. And then a few years ago, I was determined, and I think I can't remember which variation it was. There's a variation that involves like artificial harmonics and plucking with the left hand, but also bowing at the same time. And it was just so much stuff that you really have to take everything so slow to figure out all the exact movements. And I remember I set the metronome so low and I moved it up in very small increments. And then not so soon, but maybe like a month or two later, I arrived at the goal tempo, and it was actually, I gradually got there. So it was actually shocking because I didn't think I'd ever be able to play it. But I think there's so much importance in starting so slow and really analyzing every movement.
Absolutely. I think if you're impatient like me, you want to get to the target tempo yesterday. You want to be there, and in the age of Amazon, when shipping is free overnight, and there's just this immediate satisfaction, it can be a real challenge. Learning a piece, and like you said, note by note. Also the Sarasate Carmen Fantasy comes to mind. There are just so many moments in that, or a piece that you and I have done before, the Revel Tzigane, that has some tricky moments that if you don't know it, then like you said, when it comes down to it, when you're in a pressure situation, you'll figure out whether your body knows it, whether your mind knows it, whether your heart knows it. It'll be apparent.
Absolutely. Yeah, I did so much slow practicing with that piece and building it up so gradually, except specific variations like that one where it's the plucking with both hands.
Right.
I really had to do super slowly.
Right. So let's shift gears a little bit. When you're getting ready to perform a piece, do you have any superstitions? Like some people have a ritual that they go through to prepare. Is there anything that you have that's particular to Adam?
I definitely try not to drink coffee the day of. That's not really a superstition. I did, but my ritual, I definitely try to sleep in, and I try to get a good warm up in for a few hours actually the day of the concert. I think that would tire some people up, but it really gets the blood flowing. And I try to practice other pieces that I'm not performing because there's something about that lack of pressure, lack of need to play those pieces perfectly that actually gets me focused. And I start thinking about everything that I need to think about um, later on in the performance. And then I end up feeling much more comfortable later in the performance from having practiced, I don't know, Sibelius concerto or something, or short pieces. I usually warm up with short pieces and practice those and think about vibrato and, you know, how much hair I'm using on the bow or contact point or things like that, phrasing. And if I'm doing Brahms concerto later or whatever, then I feel much more comfortable and much more focused and in the zone than if I'm frantically practicing scary passages from the piece I have to perform. Because it's something like when I was younger, my father has a psychology degree. So when I was younger, he'd always talk about psychological things with me. And one thing, he's not a musician, but he always said the closer you get to your performance, the more relaxed you should be. And I kind of agree with that, especially the day of. I think freaking out and trying to practice difficult things and worrying the day of really is kind of counterproductive for me personally. Um, so that's definitely part of my ritual. And then eating really, really clean the day of and drinking a lot of water, a lot. Not too close to the concert, so I don't have to go to the bathroom when I'm on stage. Um, and then I guess there is one superstitious thing that I like to do. I'm not, sometimes I buy into it, sometimes I don't. But I have this lucky shirt. This is like this Dragon Ball Z shirt that I put on underneath my concert clothes, and I think I wore it one day. I just randomly put it on underneath as an undershirt, and then after the concert went well. I think it was Ravel actually, the Zagan concert. I think I wore it in that concert, and then after I was like, "This is my lucky shirt." So I've actually worn it.
Well, look, I'm from Chicago and grew up in the era of Michael Jordan, and there were rumors going around when I was growing up that he would wear the North Carolina shorts underneath his Bulls shorts. And is that true? I don't know, but in the recent documentary about Michael Jordan that was on ESPN and Netflix, some of his players talk about that. They say, yeah, MJ was getting in and out of his clothes, and he had the North Carolina on underneath. So people have their superstitions, even if they don't think that they do. But it's all part of being the complete artist. And you mentioned psychology and how it reminds me of when I was in college. I read the text "The Inner Game of Tennis," which is a sports psychology book, but is perfectly applicable and transcribes effortlessly and seamlessly into the world of music. And they talk about many of the things that you just mentioned about being at ease, at rest, practicing so that the day of you don't have to furiously work on anything because it's already there, it's already inside of you.
Yeah, I'd much rather practice, 8 hours a day or so. I don't think I've ever practiced 8 hours a day, but I would much rather do that much work in the very beginning and then ease it up as I go on. And that's also kind of why I like breaking up the piece into smaller sections and then working out the difficult passages and what's actually difficult about those passages, which sometimes I think a run is really difficult. And it's actually just a shift in the run. So it's not even the whole section, which sometimes I trick myself into thinking it's a whole section, but sometimes it's one shift that screws up a run, that screws up the whole section for me mentally. So that's another part of the preparation process. Um, get going in the beginning without the instrument, just looking through it and seeing potential issues or whatever. That, I think doing all that in the beginning makes the learning process much more quickly so that I can relax closer to the concert.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you also put yourself in the performance setting early on in the process by imagining things that could go wrong and addressing them early enough, like you said, with fingerings and shifts, so that when it comes time to perform the piece, it's already a part of your, canon of maneuvers, and you could even maybe make multiple choices, during a performance. Well, let's shift gears here. Everybody wants to hear you play. So if you could give us a little sample, such a fine player, but both as an orchestral player and as a soloist. So if you can grab your violin and tell us what you're going to play for us.
Okay. So I think I'll just play the opening section of Meditation from Thais by Massenet. It's a beautiful piece. It's very, very popular, but it's very popular for a reason, because it's extremely beautiful. So I'll play some of that.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for playing that, Adam. A few years ago, I was searching for a soloist to play a upcoming concert, and I asked a friend of mine, a colleague. I said, "Who can you recommend?" Because I'm always asking for recommendations, especially for young talent, people who have just come to New York or perhaps in the conservatory. And this person said, "Honestly, Adam is the person to hire." It's the best decision I think I've ever made, to get to know you, Adam, and to work with you. We've had many great experiences together, and this little sample that you just gave us is only one of, many great works that you have performed and will perform someday. So thanks so much for doing this, for being a part of this. And anything you want to say in closing?
Stay healthy, everybody. Stay safe, and listen to more classical music, and come to more concerts when it's safe again. Keep our jobs alive.
Excellent. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today, and continue to watch this channel. Don't forget to subscribe and to see more interviews with local great players like Adam. Thanks so much.